And now here on Radio 4 we've a special programme replacing midweek. Following the sad death at the weekend of the musician and broadcaster Humphrey Lyttleton, Kenneth Clarke now pays tribute to a man whose life never ceased to provide surprise and happiness across more than 8 decades. Humphrey Lyttleton, a celebration.
Best trumpet player to come out of Britain, and probably up with the tops in the world. And his enthusiasm for jazz will be sorely missed.
Samantha tells me she has to nip out now as she's promised to style her new gentleman friend's hair for him. She says she's looking forward to doing a wash and a trim before skillfully blowing him dry.
He's quite a raconteur and he's very, very funny. I mean, he's just got such great comic timing.
In 1985, Boris Becker created a record when he became the first unseeded player to win the men's title. Becker's last match was in 1999, when he was again unseeded. This time by a Russian model in a broom cupboard.
He was funny, he was urbane, erudite. Humphrey Lyttleton was cool.
Well, it's actually the musician is the thing that I take most seriously. That's the thing that I shall go on doing until I drop.
The indefatigable, unflappable, unforgettable, inimitable Humph. A man whose work brought joy to millions, whether it was his trumpet playing and band leading, his work on newspaper cartoons, his assured and down-to-earth broadcasting on jazz, or his perfect, deadpan comic turn as chairman of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. I always find him extremely relaxed, very congenial, and a very interesting man. But in this programme, he'll speak for himself, in extracts from interviews and other sources down the years, and we'll also hear from many of his grieving friends and close colleagues. By rights, Hump should never have played jazz at all. It certainly wasn't what you did when you'd been brought up as the son of an Eton College housemaster, educated at that same institution, and served in the Grenadier Guards. But Hump's love for music was obvious, right from the time as a boy, when he used to sneak downstairs at home after everyone else had gone to bed, to listen to his parents' wind-up gramophone, which was muffled by socks and underpants to avoid waking the rest of the household. At Eton, he worked out strategies to sneak off and practice, as he recalled many years later.
I learned to play it at Eton. It wasn't Eton that taught me to play the trumpet. Eton amassed its full resources for about 3 or 4 years to stop me playing the trumpet. I used to have a scheme whereby I could practice, and we had on half-holiday afternoons compulsory cricket. I'm not a cricketer. I belong to a cricketing family, but I'm the big disappointment. And I had an arrangement, I can't remember now whether it was backed up by any sort of payola or anything like that, but I had an arrangement with the scorer of the game, who was always the same each week, that I should go in round about 10 or 11, and that I should make 8 or 9 or 7 not out, which was an ideal score because it wasn't so good that I got moved up into a more serious game. And it wasn't so bad that they thought, well, this bloke's not trying, and then they used to give you a rough time if you didn't try cricket. So, 8 or 9 not out was pretty good. And then I'd leave the field and go and practice the trumpet.
Here they come. First Her Majesty the Queen, it comes into view. Then the King in the uniform of an Admiral of the Fleet. The 2 princesses standing on the balcony, listen to the crowd.
It was when he was Lieutenant Humphrey Lyttleton of the Grenadier Guards that he made his first, albeit unwitting, appearance on British radio. After seeing action at Salerno during the war, Hump was in London on VE Day, the 8th of May 1945, and his trumpet playing became a feature of the entertainment.
Towards the evening, the crowd began to thin out a little bit. And those that remained, and that was still, many thousands, were obviously sort of just keen on enjoying themselves. And I got the trumpet out, and I just started playing. And of course, everybody started dancing, and there was a big circle formed round me, and people were dancing around and that. And on one of the circuits when we were going around, there was a large crowd behind us at that time. Somebody then came up with a handcart, and I climbed up onto this, and off we went with, it was 5,000 people power, so we went at quite a speed. And from that moment on, I was in the hands of the crowd. The war was a good thing for me because it made a complete break of 6 years between finishing school. I was educated, you see, the whole Eton educated you to be a leader of men, and who the hell wants to be a leader of men? So if there hadn't been a war and I hadn't been called up into the army, I would have probably gone automatically into some sort of business, you know, at management level, or into an office somewhere or other, or into being, into the law, all the sort of okay public school professions. But as luck would have it, I was left floundering at the age of 25 when I came out of the army, having forgotten everything I ever learned at Eton, and having learnt nothing new in the army.
After the war, Humph pursued his twin interests of music and art with some success. After attending Camberwell Art College for 2 years, he joined the Daily Mail, where he teamed up with Wally Fawkes, another jazz enthusiast and my favourite cartoonist, behind the paper's popular Fluke strip.
Wally Fawkes, who is Trog, was also the clarinet player in George Webb's Dixielanders, the first band I ever joined. And then he joined my band and was with me for 8 years. And I got the job on the Mail of doing the little drawings which fitted into the letter column, and the little sort of, they were called column breakers. They were just little decorative drawings that went all over the paper then. And I got that job when he moved over from doing that to the strip cartoon.
We were both interested in so many things together, I mean, apart from the music. On the strip, he wrote the stories, and I did the drawing. So it was all tremendous fun. I mean, doing that and playing, most evenings, and it was a very close collaboration.
It's unusual for me to imagine two people working on a strip, because I devise the stories and do the drawing in mine. And I was very impressed with what they turned out, because Fluke was an odd creature. I was impressed with the way it was laid out, and it was professional, and at the same time there was some real deadly, awful, dire work about. And that fell in the top quality class.
We tried it on all the time, because we used to get together and we used to say, well, supposing we do an entire episode in, say, Monte Carlo, and we'll say to them, we must go and research. We don't know anything about Monte Carlo. We better go there and research all the casinos and everything. And so we kept trying it on them. But the furthest we ever got was Filey Holiday Camp.
And all the time he was building up a reputation as a jazz man, inspired and influenced by his two great trumpeting heroes, New Orleans' finest, Louis Armstrong, and then England's own Nat Ganella. He spent a year playing with George Webb's Dixielanders, who were largely responsible for introducing the New Orleans sound to a British audience. But as Wally Fawkes recalls, Humph soon felt the need to break away.
He was like a king from across the water when he came to join the Webb band, if you can call the Thames the water, because we were down in South London playing in a place called the Red Barn in Barnhurst. It was a tremendous impact it had when Humph came. But he was too big, he really needed to be his own band.
Humph formed his own jazz band in 1948 with Wally Fawkes on clarinet. He may have viewed his Eton education as a handicap in the entertainment world, but in fact it was this unusual background which first gained him crucial press attention as a jazz performer, as Wally recalls.
He was part of the British band that went to represent the country at the Nice Jazz Festival in 1948. Well, it was the first time after the war that all the Americans were allowed out. And they came over, Armstrong and they were all there. And Humph was the trumpet player. And I got the Daily Mail. I was only 23 and I just joined the Mail. And I said, have you got anybody covering this festival coming up? What for? They didn't have any interest in it at all. I said, oh, it's going to be the most shattering impact on the musical world. And I kind of oversold it to them. So they sent me. And I was so carried away that I forgot to send any stories back. Till they finally caught up with me on the phone from Paris and asked for details of the English band. I said, well, the trumpet player is Humphrey Lyttleton. One of the, how do you spell it? The Lyttletons? I said, yeah. So that was the making of Humph as far as the popular press were concerned, because they splashed the story of old Etonian ex-guards officer storms Nice with his trumpet. And that was the beginning of Humph as a public figure.
Humph was big.
British jazz legend, Mr. Acker Bilk.
I remember years and years ago I saw him down in Bristol in a concert. We all went with Ollie Fawkes and all the band, you know. And it was packed. I mean, we used to pack him in. And he was at number one jazz band, number one jazz band.
Humph's philosophy was that music was there to be enjoyed.
'48 was the time of the first visit of the Graham Bell Band. And they started the idea that jazz could be for dancing. Like, you didn't have to be a great jazz scholar. Leather patches on elbows and all that to be able to appreciate jazz. And they could see it was a lovely music for dancing to. And it was the beginning of jazz for dancing. When the Humph Band moved into 100 Oxford Street, we carried on with exactly that principle, and it was tremendous fun.
And this philosophy through everything he did. Many friends and fans make the point that it was Humph's personality, just as much as the music, that made his concerts what they were.
These are the fans, the genuine 100% devotees of Humphrey Lyttleton's music. They're nearly all young, or youngish. They shorten Lyttleton's first name to Humph. Just what's in the minds of these jazz club fans? What's their approach? I think Pat Goodall may have the answer.
Well, Humph's personality has a lot to do with it, but it's the way he plays jazz that really matters.
And he began to get a reputation as someone with a unique humour.
Lord Neil Kinnock.
In that cut-glass accent, but with piercing insights to what really produced fun. In the little few words before he went into a jazz number, or introducing a trumpet break, and he was getting as much laughter for his jokes as applause for his performance.
Our last piece in this little short suite is a piece that recaptures that exquisite moment when, after getting to bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, our hero is woken at 7:30 by the dawn song of the vacuum cleaner, followed almost at once by a stentorian conversation between the night porter on the floor below and the chambermaid right outside his door. These parts are played in this episode by Tony Russell and myself, respectively. It's a dedication here to those sweet-voiced ladies who hammer on your door at 20-minute intervals from 8:30 onwards to tell you that they've got work to do if you haven't. And I'd like to make a special dedication to one lady who put it rather nicely. She said, "Be a sport, let's have your sheets.
Hump's band became the leading trad jazz band in Britain. And in 1949 he signed a recording contract with EMI, which resulted in a series of outstanding records on the Parlophone label. His own composition, Bad Penny Blues, became his one and only chart hit in 1956. Significantly, it was the first jazz recording ever to make the British top 20. And very surprisingly, for a tune in the top 20, it was a very good jazz recording.
Humph made Bad Penny Blues. And it seemed to completely match my late adolescent attitude. And it really was a great piece of music, and it got to a high point in the charts, and it introduced a lot of people to trad jazz, or at least smoothed down trad jazz. And I've been a fan of Humphrey Lyttleton ever since then.
John Lennon and Paul McCartney cited Humph as an early influence several times, and the similarity between Bad Penny Blues and the Beatles' Lady Madonna from 12 years later is fairly obvious. Humph had originally been sceptical of the rhythm and blues feel which the recording engineer, the soon-to-be legendary Joe Meek, had given his tune, but the offbeat rhythm propelled it into the charts, so Humph didn't complain for long. And he's on record as having said he was flattered with the way the Beatles later adapted it.
The first time that American bands and musicians started coming over to this country, up till that point, we got all our music from records. We used to spend all night lying on the floor, face downwards, listening to old King Oliver records, Jelly Roll Morton records, and so on. As soon as real live musicians started coming over, we started hearing things which stimulated us and excited us, but which we couldn't use, partly through our own self-imposed restrictions.
Didn't fit into the dogma.
Yeah, exactly. And partly through the following that we'd built up, which was very strict about what you did and what you didn't do. I was very early on labelled as a sort of rebel and anarchist because I deviated quite often from the norm.
Saxophonist and friend Karen Sharp.
Back in, I think it was early 50s, when Bruce Turner joined the band, and they played at Birmingham Town Hall, and they got banners up. I think people threw things at them and shouted out, "Go home, you dirty boppers," because he had a saxophone in his band. And that was the first time. But he just carried on. So there's a big lesson there. I mean, as a band leader myself, only a small band, but, you know, I do worry far too much about what people think. But he's just all the way, just from right at the beginning, he's just gone his own path.
I think the reason that people take to Humph, it's really quite simple.
Singer and close friend Elkie Brooks.
And I'd like to feel that I have a similar thing, in that I have a very, very open mind, and Humph has a ridiculously open mind as regards to his music and all music. And he doesn't sort of like have this tunnel vision that jazz is the only music, the only way to go. His mind is very, very open, and that's what I love, and I think that's what's so amazing about him.
Annie Whitehead is a trombonist and friend and has been a frequent guest in Humph's band.
It happens to a lot of people who stay around for a long time. I think it did happen to Louis Armstrong. It's happened similarly to Harry Beckett. They have their own style and it just gets distilled. It gets more and more distilled. Humph's timing is fantastic. There's never a note out of place, and he knows exactly what he wants to play, and he's able to play it. And I love that. I mean, that's real freedom. You're not out to impress anymore. You're just out to be who you are.
Humph was, of course, known to everybody as a very entertaining man. But his career in comedy, which for many people today defines him even more than his music, started relatively late.
We present I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, the antidote to panel games. At the piano is Colin Sell and your chairman is Humphrey Lyttleton.
He first presented I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue in 1972, when it succeeded the very popular 1960s radio comedy show I'm Sorry I'll Read That Again, which had also featured Graham Garden and Tim Brooke-Taylor, alongside performers like Bill Oddie, John Cleese and David Hatch. By all accounts, some of the performers were originally sceptical about how well such a heavily improvised comedy show would work. But of course, improvisation is something comedy and jazz have very much in common. As a band leader, Humph had decades of experience of giving his musicians enough rope to improvise, and yet still knowing when and how to bring everything back together. So it was David Hatch who had the inspired idea of appointing Humph to provide an unflappable centre round which the mayhem of the comedy could spin.
You join us today at the beginning of the 50th series of the show. It seems like only yesterday that 4 comedians got together to prepare a rambling new show based around the flimsiest of formats. One wonders how such a half-hearted amateur creation would fare today. Let's find out. Please welcome on my left Barry Cryer and Graham Garden. And on my right, Tim Brooke-Taylor and Rob Brydon.
When he arrived on I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, indeed made the programme, it was a revelation. Not a surprise, because everybody knew always he was Mr. Capital C Cool. Always understated, always downbeat, always straight-faced. His music was like that very often. But he was a superb character, and whoever chose him to be chairman of that programme is a genius.
Let me introduce our teams tonight. Willie Rushton and Denise Coffey on my right. And on the left, Barry Cryer and Bill Tidy.
He was like a guards officer who inspecting a troop who just stepped in something awful, with that slight feeling of being offended and ever so slightly touchy, but masking it with a dear old upper-class British stiff lip and nostril.
Humph reached a whole new audience through Clue, as it was affectionately known. The programme became increasingly important to the BBC, as it was clear that listeners who weren't usually attracted to Radio 4 were tuning in for its relentlessly surreal hilarity. And like Humph's music, it gradually evolved too, to embrace a modern, innuendo-laden style of humour that simply wouldn't have been permissible when the show began.
Samantha has to nip out now as she's off to meet a gentleman friend who's helping her restore some old furniture. She's just purchased an antique chest of drawers which her friend says has suffered from having candles placed on it. Samantha says she's looking forward to stripping her new tall boy while he scrapes the varnish and wax off next to her.
As chairman of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, Humph delivered lines which, if they'd been said by Jonathan Ross, would undoubtedly have attracted the interest of Ofcom.
John Pidgeon oversaw the show as head of BBC Radio Entertainment for many years.
Humph got away with them, not just because he was an octogenarian old Etonian ex-guards officer, but because of his air of innocence. The recordings, as 2,000 fans hooted with horrified laughter, he'd put on an expression of surprised innocence, spread his arms and say, "What?"
Still preserved in the centre of Croydon are its famous Elizabethan Whitgift almshouses. When they were opened in 1599, the mayor proclaimed there was free food and shelter and invited the town's poor, needy and impotent. Well, the poor and the needy arrived, but the impotent couldn't come.
Hump's gift for innuendo, double entendre, is unmatched. He gets away with the kind of lines that in many other cases would attract terrible opprobrium. They didn't in Hump's case for two reasons. First of all, because of the charm and wit with which he produced those lines. And secondly, because the programme moulded an audience that somehow excluded all of the people who would be furious at those double meanings. And consequently, between the quality of the performance, especially his intros to different parts of the programme and his references to the delightful Samantha, those provided him with escape routes, the way he did it, and secondly, the people listening knew what they were going to listen to and turned on in even greater numbers simply because of that. He was total entertainment.
Someone once called him, I don't know what paper it was in, but someone once called him a purveyor of blue chip filth. And he told me that his ambition was to buy a small van and have a sign painted on the side, like an old-fashioned butcher's or baker's van, and the sign would read, Humphrey Lyttleton, purveyor of blue chip filth.
The next round is all about theatrical drama. As something of a student of theatrical art, I've been recently examining the various theories of who really wrote Shakespeare's plays. Conspiracy theorists point out that there's no mention of Shakespeare's writings in his will, which bequeathed to Anne Hathaway only his bed on his death. Whereas, in fact, neighbours in Stratford said they distinctly heard him give other complete works some time before.
It's a huge personality that comes over.
Wally Fawkes.
The unflappable in the face of all the anarchy that's going on all the way around him. This bored sort of, he'd rather be doing something else, feeling that he conveys on his programmes. He didn't rush into things, he didn't rush into a sentence. And he didn't rush into a phrase on the trumpet. He's got time to wait for it and catch it at its most telling beat. I think that's the same with his comedy too. I think there's great similarities there. Underplayed.
Croydon's ancient parish church was rebuilt by the architect Giles Gilbert Scott, who famously also designed our traditional red telephone boxes. Sadly, Gilbert Scott died before completion, but as a mark of respect at his funeral, male mourners patiently waited their turn to urinate in his tomb.
His great strength, unlike other quizmasters, was that the trick of Clue was that you had to interrupt him continually, not meaning to irritate the dear man, but just to get your bit in before the others did. And he had that lovely knack of taking these interruptions as if it was a surprise to him when he knew they were coming. And he would deflect them with a smile, and then there was this little window of kindness between he and the move on to another interjection.
Any more?
Yeah, if you cross... Oh, sorry.
That's right. Yes, Willie, you're senior.
Thank you.
There were more exclamation marks in that programme than you would find in the Bible.
Right, with all to play for, we go on to a game called Close Quotes. I shall give you, each of you, the first half of a well-known saying or quotation, which I'd like you to complete. Graham, now, if you want a thing done well...
Leave it in the microwave overnight. Very true.
Barry, will you complete Too Many Cooks?
On television.
Graham, cleanliness is next to...
Impossible.
Willie, Rome was not built in...
Norway.
Humphrey Lyttleton was a very interesting chairman. You know, he'd be kind of very patient with them as they went through their games, and at times it would seem he was barely tolerating the length of time they were spinning a particular round out to. And if you were at the recordings, you could see the look of resignation on his face as they went on and on and on. And sometimes he just decided, well, that was it, and he would bring a game to an end.
You've wrecked the entire game. We've sat here for the last, seems like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, wasting our time.
I can take that from you, Humph. But nobody else.
So there's no point in going on. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, dear.
No, I'm sorry. The whole game's been wrecked.
No, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I'm
Go on to the next game.
I still think I'm right.
It was Graham Garden's turn. If he'd said Mornington Crescent, he would have won the game.
Yes, but mainline stations were wild. If
anybody can win the game if they chip in out of turn.
Well, any more salt for your wound?
Rules are rules.
I mean, you could just start the game saying Mornington Crescent and expect to win that. There had to be some rules.
All right, then. Mornington Crescent.
Shut up.
And alongside the comedy, Humph continued to broadcast on jazz, giving successive generations a good-natured and unpretentious insight into the musical form he loved. Listeners were beguiled by his authority and by the complete absence of the beard-stroking exclusivity that usually causes jazz commentators to be lampooned.
Hello again, welcome to Jazz Club. Here's a welcome return of the Tubby Hayes Big Band.
What's really great about Humph, in musical terms, is for, 50 or 60 years, he sustained the thread of quality, of enjoyment, but of intelligent criticism, which I think people who enjoy music need to have accompanying the fun or inspiration they get out of music.
The saxophonist Michael Hashim has a new CD out called Multicoloured Blue, on which he plays both alto and soprano, reinforced on 4 tracks by the baritone saxophone of Joe Temperley. The tune is actually Robbins, spelled backwards. It's called Sneeball.
Karen Sharp's been a regular sax player in Humph's band.
I know an awful lot of people who everything they learnt about jazz was through that programme. I only wish I'd discovered it earlier. But, yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, he showcases British talent probably more than any other jazz presenter.
The love of the music, undiminished. And he'd taken in all the modern aspects of it too. But it hadn't altered his love for the earlier things. He didn't throw things away because something new has come in. It's not a question of displacing the old, which a lot of musicians treat the music as a sort of fashion parade. And today's fashion, that means that you can't go out wearing yesterday's clothes. But Humph loves yesterday's clothes. In fact, they're the only sort he ever wears.
He's always been like a really great champion of all different kinds of music, and that's a nice thing, is the breadth of music he plays on his shows.
Hello, I'm Humphrey Lyttleton, with, for the last time, the best part of an hour of jazz between now and 11:30. For this programme, I've chosen to do what I've done for nigh on 40 years, simply to assemble a programme of 10 contrasting items. In this case, of music that I enjoy, that arouses memories, or that has represented some sort of a landmark.
Humph was known as a bon viveur and a man of great taste. He loved good food, and he has written restaurant reviews.
Food writers are always supposed to say to people that they ought to complain more. They say the British don't complain enough. That's why the food's so dreadful. And it's very difficult to complain. If you're a nice, lovable chap like me, you don't feel like complaining too much. And I was eating in an Italian restaurant in Soho once, and eating a great mound of fettuccine, sort of pasta stuff.
And suddenly this terrible pain shot right up the side of my head, and my teeth had closed on a bit of what turned out to be a bit of cement. And they always used to tell me in the army, you know, if you want to exert your authority, it's a fatal mistake ever to make a joke, and I forgot this. So I sent for the waiter, and he came across, yes, sir, and all that, smiling, you know. And I said, I think you better tell the chef, I think the kitchen ceiling's fallen into the fettuccine. So he took my plate, which was half nibbled, and took it away and went downstairs. Came back about 5 minutes later with the same plate of food, but this time, you know, congealed somewhat, and still with the bit that I'd eaten carved out of it. And he put it down in front of me and he said, it's all right, sir. Chefs say it's not the ceiling. The cement is in the mushrooms.
Humph was greatly in demand for after-dinner speaking, for obvious reasons. It's less well known that he loved calligraphy, and that he became president of the Society for Italic Handwriting. When he founded his own record label in 1984 as a showcase for his own recordings and those of other artists he admired, he called it Calligraph Records. Through it all, there was the music, a constant thread in Humph's life. His professionalism is remembered by everyone, as are his energy and his good humour on the road.
Well, here's a piece which pays tribute to that great British institution, the Transport Caf. We've tried to convey a symphony of aromas and tastes. Balsa wood chips, lubricated egg on interior sprung toast, hand-knitted sausages in Macintosh covers, and a khaki liquid which hovers in an agony of indecision between tea and coffee.
One of the first times I played with him at the Bull's Head, and he pulled out this calypso thing, and I don't think the band had played it for yonks, you know, for years and years and years, and he said, let's play this, and he counted it in, and nothing really happened, you know. There was kind of 2 or 3 people all started playing in the wrong key and everything, and it just ground to a halt after about 30 seconds, and we all stood there looking at each other, bemused, and Humph coolly walked up to the mic and he said to the audience, I hope we're not too slick for you.
He was playing somewhere like Sheffield, and he got out the coach and asked his local down the street, he said, can you tell me where the university is? And the bloke said, there isn't one. Humph said, there is. The bloke said, well, where is it then?
On stage with him is, I mean, it's a wonderful experience because he sits and he stands, you know, he just listens to everybody as well as playing himself, and, you know, he's right behind everybody. You know, he loves the band, he loves hearing them play.
He's Humph, he's got his own way of doing things. You know, when you hear him play, you know it's Humph. He's someone to aspire to.
Astonishingly, for someone already in his 80s, he was approached in the year 2001 by the members of Radiohead, one of the biggest popular acts in the world, to contribute to their edgy, avant-garde rock record, Amnesiac. He and his band added traditional New Orleans elements to a number entitled Life in a Glass House. When he subsequently joined the group on stage for a concert in Oxford, Humph was then overwhelmed to find himself given a rapturous reception by audience members a mere fraction of his own age.
When I used to teach at a secondary school, some of the boys there used to listen to his Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and that got them on to listen to the music side of it. So it's quite nice, really, and you get a lot of people come to gigs who just come to hear his voice, and then they end up buying the albums, and but yeah, he does appeal to everyone.
Humphrey Lyttleton will leave a little cloud of very dignified, brilliant humour behind him. Casual, that lovely word, urbane, that suits him admirably. I would like to be like that myself, actually. Slightly distant, a little bit foggy, but always to the point and totally relaxed.
Well, I think he will have left his generosity of spirit, and you know, just that thing for him that there's no barriers. There's no barriers in jazz. There's no barriers in music. You know, everybody's welcome.
I think he'd like to be remembered, without being at all pompous, as something of a jazz crusader, bringing the music to people who otherwise would never have discovered it. I also know that he established a quality in radio broadcasting which at least compares with, if not exceeds, that of the Goons. And so 50 years after Hump's last performance, people will still be trying to develop and exploit the kind of humour and the kind of sophisticated fun that characterized both Humphrey Lyttleton and I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. And he didn't invent that humour. He did give it a medium of expression which meant that it reached and literally inspired millions to laugh out loud, which is a huge achievement.
There's no point in trying to replace Humphrey Lyttleton because they just don't make them like that anymore. In fact, even in his own time, he was unique. A man who made people laugh wherever he went, who eschewed the snobbery and cliquishness for which his upbringing might have prepared him, and who was dedicated in everything he did to having a good time himself and making sure others around him did the same. Thanks, Humph, for a whole lifetime of happiness.